Hey everybody, welcome to Celebration Bar Review. My name is Jackson Mumey. I'm really glad you're with me today. We're continuing our countdown to the upcoming bar exam, and you should be watching this at about 65 days until the test. That's a pretty meaningful threshold for most people because right now almost everyone has begun at least some part of their studying, or at the very least has started to get serious about selecting a bar review and beginning the study this week. At this point, 65 days, I'll tell you that there is still enough time to get through our course. You need about 250 to 300 hours of study. So if you break that out over the 65 days, you can see that you're looking at about 4 to 5 hours a day on average. And that's manageable if you're doing mostly studying. It's also manageable if you're working part-time. If you've got a really demanding full-time job, it's pretty tough to do 5 hours a day on average, plus a regular job. So this is the point of decision, I think, for an awful lot of people. Now, this weekend, my message to my students, I talked a little bit about what I call tomorrows. And I'm not going to regale you with my singing from Annie. That would really be painful. There is something about thinking about tomorrow. Of course, that's the Fleetwood Mac song, and I'm not going to sing that one either. But when you consider what's coming in the next few days, in 65 days, it looks like a lot of tomorrows are out there. And there are those who obsess about that at this point. There are also those people who've just come out of the results process from the previous exam. At this point in time, most of the jurisdictions have reported results. There may be one or two that are still waiting for sort of the end of the cycle. But most people now have results. And obviously, so some people are in that position where they just found out that they have to retake the exam. And if you're in that situation, then I think it would be normal and expected that you would be looking at your yesterdays, not at your tomorrows. But here's what I want to say to you. It's time to change your focus, particularly if you're in that retake mode. You need to start looking at tomorrow. Now, for those of you that are taking a bar exam for the first time, maybe you're just graduating from law school, or you haven't taken a bar exam in many years and you're coming to a new jurisdiction where you have to take a bar exam for the first time, looking at tomorrow can also be a pretty overwhelming task. The amount of work that's ahead of you, just when I said 5 hours a day, some of you fell over, what do I do? So how do you deal with that? I think that you want to deal with tomorrow, interestingly enough, by dealing with today first. What you want to do is to ask yourself what you're going to do today to get ready for the bar exam. I always worry a bit when a student tells me that they have a very ambitious plan for their studies. They say something like, I'm going to be studying full time, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit in the library, or I'm going to go to my favorite study spot, or maybe I'm going to camp out at Starbucks for the next 10 or 12 hours for every single day for the next 65 days. Let me just say, that's not a very good plan. But likewise, I worry when someone says, I'm a little overwhelmed right now, and I'm not going to do anything about it. I'll just wait and get to it tomorrow. Yeah, no, that doesn't work either. So I think if you've got the luxury of studying full-time or nearly full-time, and you're just beginning your studies, the kind of study schedule that I suggest is roughly this. I would do 3 hours of study in the morning. I would take a break and at lunch, but I would do that 3 hours as uninterrupted as possible. Then I'd take about a 1.5 hour lunch break, but certainly no less than an hour. And if that sounds familiar, that's really what you would be doing on the bar exam itself. And then I would take a 3-hour study session in the afternoon. So again, what we're doing is mirroring the bar exam as it's given in almost every jurisdiction by using that process. Then, if you've got the time, take an extended dinner break, and by extended, at least a couple of hours. Spend some time with your family, spend some time at work, spend some time just getting out, taking a walk, doing whatever you can. Get away from your bar studies for a little bit of time. And if you're compelled to still study for the day, and if you still have the work to do and you've got the energy to do it, then I would spend no more than 2 hours in the evening. And during those 2 hours, I would primarily do review of work you've done earlier in the day. In other words, I generally wouldn't suggest starting new material. If you're in our course and you're a photo reader, you absolutely want to do some photo reading at night for the next day, but that's a completely different subject. The reason for this general study structure that we're talking about is that I think that this is the maximum of what most people can manage, that this is what you can sustain over a long period of time if you're studying in essentially a full-time mode. In addition, of course, it mirrors what you're going to see on the bar exam, where you've got to take a 3-hour test and then you get a lunch break, then you do a 3-hour test, and then theoretically you're getting ready for the next day's exam. So it's a good way to get yourself ready and prepared both physically and mentally for the test. By the way, you should start getting up at the hour in the morning that you're going to get up on test day. I know you're thinking to yourselves, oh, I don't really want to get up that early, this far ahead of the test. But actually, it'll make it a whole lot easier if you can turn it into a habit. So I encourage that. I also encourage, as I've said elsewhere, that you get a little bit of exercise. If you're using our paraliminal program, that you do that as well. So that early start is really a benefit for you in each day. If you're not one of the people who are studying full-time, what should you do? Because sometimes what happens is it becomes so overwhelming to look at this study plan that you say, I could never do it, and therefore you keep procrastinating. I think the greatest way to defeat procrastination is simply to do a little bit every single day. In other words, if you normally get up at 7 a.m., as I was just talking about, get up at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning and study for just that 1 hour. Add an hour here, add an hour at lunch, add an hour in your commute into work or back from work or taking the kids wherever they've got to go. Maybe you do a little bit of studying while you're watching your kids at soccer. Do something. Typically, I hear from a student who's purchased the course, and at the moment that they purchase, they're excited and they're enthusiastic, and that's great. And then I don't hear from them. They go into radio silence. They don't post on the group. I may not get any feedback from them. And they'll say, I'm going to get started. I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. And they start messing around on the edges of technology. They start wondering where they find a particular lecture, or how do they begin photo reading, or how do they do X or Y or Z. It doesn't really matter what it is. Sound familiar? And what happens is the person gets so caught up in the minutia, in the trivia, that they really lose out on the core, which is getting something done every day. So the question to ask yourself, and the question that I think you want to empower others to ask you is, what did you do today? It's what you do today that makes your tomorrows worthwhile. It's not enough to say that you're simply thinking about studying. The question is, did you do a little bit of reading? Did you do a little bit of listening to a lecture? Did you do some practice questions? You don't have to do it all. You don't have to do hours and hours. You don't have to grind it out. You don't have to be like the people sitting in the big box bar review, but you have to do something. There's a momentum process that occurs in our course, and it starts to develop as you begin to study. The whole process seems a little less overwhelming, a little less frightening, a little more manageable day by day. But the hardest step, and the thing that students tell me consistently, is that taking the first step, going from zero to some level of activity, is the biggest step to take. So I think the way to deal with tomorrow is to do something today. Set a goal for yourself just for today. I've talked with students over the years that I would describe as being super planners. They've planned down everything as it relates to the bar exam, even to the time that they plan to arrive at the bar exam site and what they're going to do in the hours on the night before the exam. And that's great, except that when they start telling me all this, and we're 65 days away from the exam, and I think that's really a problem for some people. It's easy to get caught up in those external things, those big super planning things, because they're really nothing other than an escape from today's assignment and today's work. So, 65 todays in front of you. Take each day today and make it worthwhile. Do something valuable with your studies today. As I've said in these earlier messages, spend some time in exercise, spend some time in prayer, spend some time volunteering, doing something for others, spend time with your family, spend some time really getting perspective on what you're doing, and spend some time on studying for the bar. Does that seem like a lot? Sure it is, but you can break it into small pieces. Make a schedule, keep that schedule, make it your best friend, and make sure you do that today and not tomorrow. Have a great today. I'll be back to you, not tomorrow, but next week, and we'll continue our countdown as we get closer to the exams. Thanks for being with me today. Have a great day of study. Bye-bye for now.